There's a pretty easy way to tell who pays attention to college football. I mean, who really pays attention and who's just kind of a casual fan. Ask them what they think about Oklahoma's chances in 2021. Ask them what they think about Oklahoma to the playoffs and what Oklahoma might do if they make the playoffs and what their chances are of Oklahoma winning a national title. Ask somebody that. If they tell you this same old tired line about, oh, well, I'm sure their offense will be great, but their defense is going to be terrible. It's one of the worst in America. They'll make the playoffs because the Big 12 is hot doo-doo, and then they'll get blown out in the first round. That's how you know they're a casual fan. I'm not suggesting that Oklahoma's guaranteed to win a playoff game in 2021, but if they're going to win one, this is the year. This is not the Oklahoma defense of 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, their offense is going to be amazing. Spencer Rattler is going to be a Heisman candidate. They've got 2 really good running backs and a slew of wide receivers. But Oklahoma's defense over the last 2 years is probably the most improved in all of college football. We're going to talk about that in today's video when I give you a preview and a game-by-game prediction for the 2021 Oklahoma Sooners. Let's go. Hey, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou. And guess what? I'm live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Also, in addition to that as well. Hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? Facts. Some of them are even watchable. I don't know about this one. You can watch it and let me know at the end of the video whether you think this one is watchable or not. But up today, we do have the Oklahoma Sooners season preview and game-by-game prediction. I do this series of videos every single offseason. There's a playlist on this channel called 2021 Predictions. You can click on that playlist and it'll pull up all the teams that I've done so far. Or if I can remember, I'll put a link up here that you can click on and it'll take you right to it. I'm going to do a bunch more of these throughout the month of August. I'm going to try to cover as many teams as I possibly can. The teams that I do come from my Patreon page. The link to that page is in the description of this video. Click it, it'll take you there. There's a post over there called 2021 Predictions. And on that post, everybody leaves a comment of what team it is they want me to do a prediction for. Those are the teams I do. Pretty simple. Up today, Oklahoma. All right, head coach Lincoln Riley. Been in Norman since 2017, right? Won the Big 12 every single year. Made the playoffs every single year except for last year. So heading into his 5th season now. 6 straight Big 12 titles for Oklahoma. Could this be their last Big 12 title? Of course, everyone knows the big news by now. Texas and Oklahoma have announced their intention to leave the Big 12 and join the SEC. Effective 2025. No one really thinks it's going to take that long, though. If you go back to Texas A&M and Missouri, similar situation, decided to leave the Big 12. They played one more season in the Big 12, then paid their buyout, and then joined the SEC. Most people think Texas and Oklahoma is going to go the same way and expect them to be playing an SEC schedule in 2022. So it is possible that this could be the last year in the Big 12 for Texas and Oklahoma. We'll see. Anyway, 6 Big 12 titles in a row, right? Unbelievable. Made the playoffs every year, but last year, I think one of the favorites to make the playoffs again this year. I talked about it a little bit at the beginning. We're going to get into it some more here when I talk about the defense. But let's start with the offense. Now, the casual fan is right. Oklahoma is going to have a high-powered offense. You don't have to pay very close attention to college football to know that. Listen to some of these numbers. They've averaged 40 points or more 6 years in a row. That 40 points in any season is amazing. To average 40 points or more 6 years in a row is unbelievable. Quarterback Spencer Rattler returns. He'll be a Heisman favorite this year, along with several of the other big-name quarterbacks in college football. No problems there. He was a little rough beginning of the season last year. It was his first year starting, had some turnover issues, had some nerve issues, in my opinion. But he settled down as the season went along, and I think Oklahoma was probably one of the better teams in America towards the end of last year. Of course, they didn't make the playoffs because he had those 2 early season losses. But Spencer Rattler looked really, really good the more the season went on, and a lot of people have him picked as the top returning quarterback in all of college football. Running back, you got Kennedy Brooks coming back, and you also bring in a transfer from Tennessee, Eric Gray. Fire sale in Knoxville. Jeremy Pruitt fired. They're on now, their 5th coach in the last 12 years, plus NCAA knows and around allegations of paying players money in McDonald's bags. Eric Gray and pretty much every other player worth anything at all on Tennessee's roster transferred out. Oklahoma got running back Eric Gray. He's pretty good. Wasn't great, right? Wasn't great last year at Tennessee. Looked great at times. Definitely has a ton of potential, and let's be honest, he's going to be surrounded by more talent this year at Oklahoma. Infinitely more talent this year at Oklahoma than he ever had on Rocky Top at Tennessee. So I do think Eric Gray has the potential to have a good season. Wide receivers, Again, Oklahoma seems to always have a stable of future NFL wide receivers. I don't think this year will be any different. I think they do need maybe somebody to step up at wide receiver, another playmaker there. They've got lots of reliable, really good players. Maybe one more playmaker needs to stand to come out this year. You bring a transfer in. Mike Woods was that his name? Did I even write it down? I think it's Mike Woods. And you got a freshman, Mario Williams. Wide receiver is not that difficult to transition from high school to college, in my opinion. Now, there are some positions that are harder than others. I think wide receiver is one of the positions where if you can run, get open, catch, and make athletic plays, you can play right away in college. I think Mario Williams can do those things. I wouldn't be surprised to see him see a lot of action as a freshman this year. And Oklahoma's always loaded at the wide receiver position. Offensive line, Oklahoma's got a couple positions to fill, but Oklahoma's offensive line is good to great every single year. Their offensive line coach, what's his first name? Bill? I think it's Bill. Bill Bedenbaugh, one of, if not the best offensive line coaches in all of America, and a hell of a recruiter. Sam Pittman, now a head coach, great offensive line coach. Matt Luke, former head coach, now offensive line coach, great offensive line coach. There's several around college football. You can't make a list of the top offensive line coaches in college football and top recruiters in college football without including Bill Bedenbaugh. I'm not that concerned about Oklahoma's offensive line, even though they got a couple of positions to fill there. Now let's talk about their defense. Everybody knows Oklahoma's defense has been its Achilles heel really for the entirety of the playoff era. Oklahoma has had one of, if not the best offenses in all of college football for what seems like year after year after year after year. Heisman winning and Heisman contending quarterbacks year after year after year after year after year. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, now Spencer Rattler. Every single one of them puts up a ridiculous amount of yards and touchdowns. Every one of them can move around and run the ball. Every one of them is athletic. Every one of them is accurate with the ball. No different this year with Spencer Rattler coming back. The offense is going to be unbelievable, but the defense has been the Achilles heel. 17 and 18 in particular. 2017, Oklahoma made the playoffs, lost to Georgia in the first round. Oklahoma scored 48 points and lost. And I'm a Georgia fan. I'm not bringing that up to rub it in. I've said this a bunch of times. That was honestly one of the worst defensive performances I have ever seen. Oklahoma, I think, was ranked 130th in total defense that season, and it showed. Couldn't tackle. Wide open holes you could have ran a truck through. I don't know how many 50 and 60-yard touchdown runs Georgia had in that game. Oklahoma would have won that game if they would have had even a mildly capable defense. If Oklahoma would have had last year's defense, Oklahoma would have won that game in 2017. And I think this defense this year can be even better than what it was last year. Let's take a look at a couple of numbers. 17 and 18, I think, were the bottom of the barrel in terms of Oklahoma's defense. They were bad from pretty much 2015 to 2019. But 17 and 18 were just absolutely horrible. 17, 18, and to a certain extent, 19. 2018, Oklahoma gave up 6.1 yards per play. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with the stat yards per play, but 6.1 yards per play given up on defense is absolutely horrendous. 2020, last season, that number improved by a whole yard to 5.1. Now, that might not seem like a big deal, but if you look up the yards per play numbers, you will see that there is a big difference between 6.1 and 5.1. Last year, only gave up 22 points per game. That's elite numbers defensively, no matter what league you play in. In this age of offense where teams are spreading the ball out, RPOs, every quarterback's throwing it 40 times a game, it seems like. Teams have abandoned the running game in some cases. To hold opponents to 22 points per game over the course of a season is not good. That's great. And if Oklahoma holds opponents to 22 points per game over the course of this season, they're going to have a chance to make and win a playoff game for the first time in the playoff era. 2018, they were 33 points per game. So they have improved in the course of 2 seasons, their defense by 11 points per game. That's a big deal. Go back and look at some of Oklahoma's losses. Almost all of them are within that margin of 11 points. This is going to be the best defense Oklahoma's had in a long, long time. If Oklahoma's going to win a playoff game, it's not going to be because of their offense. It's going to be because of their defense. They've had an offense good enough to make the playoffs, win a playoff game, and challenge for a national title for 5 or 6 years in a row. The defense has been letting them down. I'm a believer in Alex Grinch at defensive coordinator. I had to see it to believe it. And it wasn't so much that I doubted Alex Grinch as much as it was that I doubted Oklahoma, anyone at Oklahoma, being able to turn that defense around in a 2 or 3 year period because it was just that bad. Alex Grinch has done it. The recruiting is better. Oklahoma may have one of the best, if not the best, defensive lines in the Big 12. How long has it been since you've been able to say that? Alex Grinch is worth every single penny that they're paying this guy. Linebackers, Nick Benito, probably going to have double-digit sacks, and you got a couple other good ones back there too. And at the defensive secondary, you got some returning players and some young talented players to fill the gaps in there. Like I said, all three levels of Oklahoma's defense, in my opinion, better than they've been in the playoff era for sure. And you probably have to go back several years before that to find a defense that's going to be as good as this year's at Oklahoma. If Oklahoma's defense plays as good as I think they can, I would not be surprised at all to see Oklahoma not only win the Big 12, but win a playoff game and challenge for a national title. Let's put their schedule up on the screen right now and see if they can actually do it. All right, you already know I got the copious notes here. That's right. I do all the research, so you don't have to. But you start things off with Tulane on the road at Tulane. I guess, are you looking for credit for scheduling them on the road? Okay. It's a win either way. You'll blow them out. You come back home for two non-con games, your final two non-con games of the year, as the Big 12 plays 9 conference games. You play Western Carolina at home. That's a W. And then you play Nebraska. Okay, forget the first 2 games. Oklahoma can do whatever they want in those 2 games. They'll win by 50 points. Nebraska. Is Nebraska the most disappointing team in all of college football over the last 15 years? They might be. Them and Tennessee are close. Texas at least has had a good season or 2 here or there. In the last 10 years, they made a New Year's Six Bowl and beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in 2018. Florida State won a national title in 2013. Now, they've been absolutely horrible since then. Nebraska, it's hard to find somebody that even remembers Nebraska being a great team anymore. Now, I remember it. I happen to think the 1995 Nebraska team may be the best college football team of all time. That's not the point of this video, though. Scott Frost, they bring him in. They pay him a ton of money after what he did at Central Florida, leading into an undefeated season, New Year's 6 win over Auburn. They bring him in. He hasn't done anything at all. They were basically a 4 or 5 win team when he got there. Now, 3 years in, they're still a 4 or 5 win team. The quarterback situation has been a problem. They've had some quarterbacks that have looked good, but then they've had injury issues. They've been inconsistent. It just has not worked out well at Nebraska for Scott Frost. A little bit surprising, I guess. I thought Scott Frost would have more success at Nebraska than he's had so far. In fact, if you go back to the previous coach that was fired, in Scott Frost's first 3 seasons, he has more losses than the previous coach had in his last 3 seasons. So that tells you Scott Frost could be on the way out soon if things don't start changing direction at Nebraska. This is a rematch, or not a rematch, but a rekindling of an old rivalry. Of course, Oklahoma and Nebraska, former Big 12 rivals, and it goes back even further than that. I would love for this to be a good game. As a college football traditionalist, there's nothing I like more than watching a great college football rivalry that is also a great game, right? Georgia, Florida, great rivalry, but when it's a blowout, it's not the same. Texas, Oklahoma, great rivalry. When it's a blowout, it's not the same. I would love to see this Nebraska-Oklahoma game be a good game. It's not going to happen. Oklahoma will probably win this game by 30 points, in my opinion. I'm done buying in with Scott Frost. I'm going to have to see it to believe it mode now with Nebraska. I think Nebraska could have potentially their worst season yet under Scott Frost this year. They could go 3-9. I haven't done a Nebraska prediction yet, but their schedule is tough. I'm not convinced Nebraska has the talent to compete with the majority of the teams in the Big Ten. They definitely don't have the talent to compete with Oklahoma. This is a home game for Oklahoma. Nebraska has to go down there just to get bent over and have it shoved in raw. I think Oklahoma absolutely embarrasses Nebraska in week 3 and gets a huge win in this former rivalry game. Then you start your Big 12 schedule. Now, we could see some interesting things in the Big 12 this year because of Texas and Oklahoma announcing that they're leaving the SEC, right? Road games. I expect hostile environments anytime Texas and Oklahoma make a road trip this season within the Big 12. The opposing teams' fans are not going to be kind to Oklahoma. Not that opposing fans are ever kind to the opposing team, but I think it's going to be turned up a notch more. I think a lot of people are pointing at Texas and Oklahoma within the Big 12 and saying it's your fault. And maybe it is. But the point is, I think there's going to be some tough road trips for both Oklahoma and Texas this year within the Big 12. But you get West Virginia at home. West Virginia is another team I'm not sold on yet. I don't know how well their coach is going to end up doing there. I haven't been impressed with what he's done so far. You'll get a win there at home against West Virginia. Now, then you got to go on the road and play Kansas State. Now, before anybody starts laughing, yes, it is funny that for whatever reason, it seems like Oklahoma can't beat Kansas State. I believe you've lost to them 2 years in a row now. And you say, well, you got to play them on the road. This could be one of those games where the hostile environment catches up with you. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I think you're going to roll into Kansas. Is it Manhattan? I believe it is. You're going to roll into Kansas State and get a W. And this will be the game, ladies and gentlemen, where I believe you will see Oklahoma fans in an opposing team's stadium, Kansas State, a Big 12 team. I believe you will see Oklahoma fans in the bleachers at Kansas State in the fourth quarter of this game chanting S-E-C, S-E-C. S-E-C. And yeah, Oklahoma, man, you will be at home chanting right along with them. Now, the week after that, the huge Red River shootout game versus Texas, neutral field, Cotton Bowl, State Fair, played every year. You're going to win this one too. I'm sorry. Again, Texas, brand new coaching staff. Questions at the quarterback position. Now, Texas has got some serious talent. If you look at the recruiting within the Big 12 over the last 4 years, either Oklahoma or Texas has finished first or second in recruiting every single year. If any year Oklahoma was first, Texas was second. If Texas was first, Oklahoma was second. These are the two most talented teams in the Big 12, and it's really not close. And yes, Texas does have a ton of talent. I know we haven't seen it on the field, particularly the last 2 years, 19 and 20. Tom Herman fired, Sarkisian in, an offensive mind. Just too many questions for me with Texas this year, plus the distraction of the news of going to the SEC, I think hurts a younger team more than it hurts a team like Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma gets it done. I think Oklahoma beats Texas again. This will make Oklahoma, I think, 10-3 against Texas in the last 13 games. You're on a roll and you're undefeated. You come back home and you play TCU. TCU can run the ball, and they're going to run the ball. Will they be able to run it on Oklahoma? I don't know. TCU is a team that when they decide they want to, they can play some defense. They've shown that over the years. Gary Patterson used to be the only coach in the Big 12 you could rely on for even acting like defense existed. TCU is a pretty talented team. They're not Oklahoma talented. I do think TCU has the potential to give Oklahoma some trouble in this game. It comes after the Kansas State game, which I know it's Kansas State, but they beat you twice in a row, so I expect that to be kind of an emotional game, and it's on the road. The following week, you have to play Texas. That's obviously a huge game. And then the third week of this stretch here is home against TCU. I wouldn't be surprised if the Big 12 stuck you on at 11 a.m., the big noon kickoff or whatever they call it on Fox. What a joke that is. There's no such thing as a big game at noon. I don't care what Fox or the Big 12 tries to tell you. This could be a hangover game for Oklahoma. People talk about trap games. You want to look for a trap game? Maybe this is a trap game. Definitely ain't the next week when you play at Kansas. I do think you're going to beat TCU, but I think this is actually one of the most difficult games on your schedule. But I think you get the winner home against TCU. Then you go on the road and you play at Kansas minus Les Miles. Of course, they gave the hat, the boot in the offseason. Lots of trouble going on with Les Miles. Some of it followed him to Kansas, some from back at his time at LSU. I'd be shocked if we ever saw Les Miles roaming a sideline in major college football again. You'll blow Kansas out by as much as you want to. You come back home, you play Texas Tech. Another team that I just can't take seriously. I'm sorry. Yes, I know they win a lot of games 63-60. They also lose a lot of games 45-20. I'm just not a buyer on Texas Tech. There's absolutely no reason why they should compete with a team like Oklahoma, particularly this year when Oklahoma's defense, I expect to be possibly top 15, top 20 in America. And you're going to say, well, I thought you said they had a great defense. That's not great. Listen, if you got a top 5 offense, which Oklahoma does, will for the foreseeable future, if you got a top 5 offense, you win a lot of games with a top 15 or top 20 defense. Texas Tech will be one of them. Oklahoma gets a huge win. Then you get your bye week. Real late in the season for a bye week. You better hope you avoid injuries early in the season here because you got to wait a long time to get a week to rest up. You go on the road and play Baylor, win. Baylor, where's Baylor going to end up when the Big 12 collapses in on itself? Maybe nowhere. Oklahoma could be the nail in the coffin for Baylor. I think that's a huge win on the road at Baylor. Then the Iowa State game. Now, this is possibly the game of the year in the Big 12. I know a lot of people are pumped up and high on Iowa State. The Iowa State fans are even starting to come out of the woodwork. You know what? They're right. Iowa State is a legitimately good team. Iowa State last year was not a fluke. Iowa State was a talented, good football team on both sides of the ball last year. And on top of that, they get almost their entire team back from last year. They've also got what I think is the second best coaching staff in the Big 12 with Matt Campbell and company. You get them at home, though. Just good news was according to this one Oklahoma YouTuber that used to be around, maybe he still is, I don't know. He says you can't win on the road at Iowa State. Says it's impossible. Lucky for you, you get them in Norman. Could they beat you? Yes. Yes, they could beat you. I'm not predicting it to happen, though. I think Oklahoma gets the win. They're 11-0. The Bedlam game on the road at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy. I heard yesterday Mike Gundy cut his mullet off. Is that true? If it's true, Oklahoma wins by 50. If it's not true and he still has his mullet, you win by 30. In any case, Oklahoma wins the Bedlam game. You're 12-0. There you go, an undefeated regular season for Oklahoma. And no, I do not pick undefeated regular seasons all the time. I don't think I've ever picked my Georgia Bulldogs to go undefeated. I think I've only picked Alabama to go undefeated twice. Clemson, I may have picked to go undefeated 3 times, but let's get real, it's the ACC. I legitimately think this is the best team Oklahoma has had in a long, long time. I do preseason polls. I do 3 preseason polls a year, right? I do one after signing day in February. I do one after the spring practices and the spring game in April. I do a third one coming up here in about a week in mid-August. When I did my last preseason poll right after spring practices, my number 1 team was Oklahoma. I would not be shocked or surprised at all to see Oklahoma win the national title. Now, when I do these prediction videos, I don't predict conference championship games, I don't predict playoffs, and I don't predict bowl games because we don't know who the teams would potentially be playing. And obviously, especially in bowl games, matchups is very important. I think Oklahoma has the talent and the ability and the capability to beat any team in America this year. But until I know an opponent or a potential opponent in both the Big 12 title game and any possible playoff game, I don't waste time trying to predict those things in August. But Oklahoma is 100% capable of winning a national title in 2021.